So LG is in the news this week because it's shutting down its smartphone division. I'm in the market for a new smartphone, so is LG a good idea? What's your minimum specification? So I haven't used LG in a while. Last LG smartphone I used was this, the V20. Used it for a year and a half. Great little phone. I actually charged it for the first time today. It's getting quite warm already. That's the indicative feature of the V20. However, with the smartphone division winding down as of July 31st, as some software updates and stuff, I decided to invite onto the channel a friend, an LG expert, somebody who's used LG for years, to tell me what's good about LG now as they're winding down. But also, we're going to discuss whether buying a smartphone from a company that isn't going to be able to provide updates necessarily a good idea. So please join me in welcoming to the channel Juan Carlos Bagnell, aka Some Gadget Guy. Hello, Juan.
I'm really glad to be here. You're far too kind calling me an expert of anything. I mean,
So you've just come off a 2-hour live stream over on your Twitch channel, all about LG, essentially evangelizing the brand in the wake of it kind of being the gutter boy, the scapegoat in every comparison.
yeah,
Article.
I definitely I feel like there's a general trend towards leaning into YouTube analytics to say who the winner of a smartphone comparison should be, and then just sort of spouting that message to sort of a popularity algorithm as opposed to like more fairly comparing the pros and cons of different devices.
I mean, if I did a video, AMD, Intel, more views than, say, Xilinx, even though just as important in the industry, right?
Right.
Everybody loves FPGAs.
Oh,
They're
for
all good
sure.
stuff. So,
For sure. Exactly. Exactly. I mean, no, it's to be fair. I mean, like as content creators, you've got to look at where you put your time and effort. But I kind of feel like that's been ratcheted up over the last couple of years, and it makes alternative brand conversations a lot more difficult for the how you put your effort and your time into projects.
so I wanted to start this discussion by asking you, well, LG's had a few phones out recently over the past year or so.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not the sort of person who necessarily has updated my phone straight as it comes out. I'm
Right.
usually 12 months after the fact. And I know that LG's had, say, the V60, the Wing. That was a
Mm-hmm.
new one quite recently. They've had the Velvet
That's right.
and the G8X. I think that those are the four sort of main sort of mid-range to flagship models.
Well, yeah, I mean, so LG had a whole catalog. I mean, at the entry level, the K series, there was the Stylo, in some markets. I mean, they actually had a really solid rep for entry level and mid ranger phones too. It's difficult because the last couple years of LG's smartphone division was definitely mired by distribution issues. I would say the last 2 years, LG leaned heavy on carrier contracts. So they were selling fewer unlocked devices, as that's more profitable for the division,
Mm.
especially for a smartphone division that was in the red. So each region now then you have to play the carrier game. Did the V50 come to this region? Can I import it? Does it have the right LTE bands? Can I get this to work on my carrier? And that's one of the trickier aspects of kind of shopping out on an LG right now.
I think I read, I mean, I've been doing a little bit of research this morning that the V60 took a long time to come to the UK or isn't actually technically released here. And it makes the smartphone market such a different world from, say, the common PC market. I can't
Mhm.
imagine if, say, you had to buy an Intel processor on a contract and you could only buy it from certain carriers. But this is the land of the smartphone. So
Right.
it's I mean, in the UK, it's different to the US because we arguably don't have that sort of carrier limitation, as it were. So we can choose where we buy it from, whether it's on contract, whether it's outright. Um, I guess I've been pretty steadfast in essentially buying my phone SIM free,
Mhm.
unlocked, or I've been lucky enough to play the review sample process.
It's kind of nice when you get to dabble and you get to kind of play around with a few of those options. But even for your own personal needs, I would say you're still probably ahead of the curve. Even if you're flipping your phone yearly, you're probably pushing towards the front end of that bell curve, where I think a lot of consumers are now trying to stretch a phone purchase months past 2 years. Depending on what analyst you follow, we're seeing 25 to 28 months of average phone ownership, which means for every person like you, there are probably twice as many people trying to hold onto their phones for 3 years or longer.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. Yeah, I definitely envy the European and the UK markets because I think consumers have a better understanding of how much these things really cost. I think it's easy to get caught up in top of the line iPhones when you see a $50 a month charge on your bill, and then you don't realize that you're upside down on a phone lease with a phone that isn't worth as much as what you're paying on it a year after you've started that process.
And you haven't got all the funky things like unlimited data.
Oh, I mean, again, we've got a lot of unlimited plans in the United States, for sure.
So I mean, my question to you really, I mean, two parts. Let's start with the phones. I'm coming from a P30 Pro.
Okay.
Which, this is an old review sample, I'd admit, and I've used it for almost a year and a half now, I think, since it's been released. Loved it. I can't really use it without a case. I've taken the case off because I had all my credit cards in here and I don't want to show them off on stream.
I was going to say, your phone is in pristine condition. Very well done.
Shiny, shiny. I always find it amusing when people buy these, really intricate colors and then they put a wraparound case that you can't see.
Yeah.
However, one of my criticisms about this phone is that the camera quality has decreased over time.
Oh, interesting.
To the point where my wife's Honor phone produces better pictures than my P30 Pro. I'm not sure whether it's just, early review sample tweaks and
hardware
issues
and stuff.
But in the end, I'm in the mood. I am in the mood for a new phone.
Okay.
Like I say, I've used the LG G20 for a couple of years. I have a very good friend, Charlie from Semi Accurate. He swears by LG phones, especially because of the dual screen aspect.
Oh, it's really fun.
Getting the beauty of a foldable without having a foldable screen, right?
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure I want to go for an LG dual screen device. What exactly are my options?
Well, okay. So, especially in the UK, I would definitely check up on very specific models of LGs and what frequency bands they support. But you could even track as far back as a phone like the V50. The V50 was the first that incorporated that. If you get a South Korean model of the V50, you have pogo pins on that phone that support a dual display case. And then also that leaves the USB port free, where on future iterations of this, the USB port needed a little magnetic charge adapter. Actually, I have like 3 or 4 of these floating around my house right now.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So that's what we used on the, there was one specific for the G8X, and then there was a newer model for the Velvet and the V60. So Velvet and V60 use the same charge adapter. Depending on your needs, again, I really like to preface this a bit first and a bit more focused on what is it that you like to do with the phone? Because a device like a dual display, if it's a duo where it's 2 screens on a hinge, if it's a folding phone like a Fold, or if it's like a V60 or a Velvet, these are really compelling multitasking options. I can't tell you how many the bad habits I've built up where a V60 just constantly runs with 3 apps all the time. Like I feel so claustrophobic and I feel so constrained when I can't keep a Discord up and a YouTube stream and like then move back and forth like with the video, or then play a game and have like a full documentary playing at the same time. It's bad. I mean, if you're not really looking to drive a device like that, I understand why some people kind of feel like, oh, dual displays don't really do anything for me. But it's really more a question of use. If you're looking to get more use out of your phone, and a phone that could help you displace some of your camera and laptop use, that's where these products really shine. V60 becomes a more interesting option if you like stylus support. The V60 and the Velvet, both giving you proper Wacom active pen tech in those displays. Right. And it's silly. I mean, like, I'll get a document, I'll get a contract to sign. I immediately turn to a phone now. It's like, it's faster, it's more immediate. Pen, scribble out a signature, send it right back off. The idea that I would like have a sit in front of a computer and like have a scan of my signature to try and embed in a document just sounds ridiculous these days. So again, I like to make these a bit more use based. If you're looking at a standalone, a single screen phone, I think even going back as far as like a G8 can be a really interesting option in this day and age. The V60 is a diesel truck of a phone though, and it's really difficult to find anything that can be competitive on all fronts. Where the V60 experience is very modular. You want a phone for gaming, it's a great option for gaming. If you want a phone for content creation, it's a monster content creation. If you want, crazy multitasking, it's great there. You want a desktop replacement with Screen Plus, which is almost as good as Dex, it's a good phone for that too. It really is kind of interesting, kind of playing back and forth what these different lines of phones have had to offer.
Well, I mean, I guess so. My main use case is probably multitasking. I am forever switching between windows because I'm, say, in a work chat, trying to read a link, trying to share stuff with other people. I even recently purchased YouTube Premium just so I could have the little picture-in-picture, which we don't get in the UK as standard. So I'm paying my £13 a month just to get that. I mean, no ads is good as well. I mean, stylus support. I mean, so if I went the dual screen route, the second screen doesn't have stylus support.
It does.
It? Oh, it does as well.
Yeah,
okay,
that's interesting. They both do. I mean, again, it's like those little considerations. The V60 was really well thought out for a lot of those kinds of interactions, and I don't feel like it ever really got the credit it's deserved. So I mean, even from like plugging in nice headphones to having your your USB charge port free, being able to dock it, being able to dual display it. I mean, it's really hard. It's really hard to find any one device that can kind of replicate as many different usage scenarios as the V60.
I mean, I don't really need it as a desktop because I have a few monsters laying around.
I'm sure you're probably pretty well covered.
if my audio sounds weird, it's because I've got a 70 decibel server just over there running like stink, and I've got my nice RTX voice going on.
It's doing a remarkably good job, though. I'm very impressed with your audio right now, considering.
I'm wondering how tinny I'm going to come out. However, so... Yeah, I'm interested in this sort of 8K video support on the V60. Is that worth getting a V60 for? Or is it just the basics of 8K on smartphones?
The issue I've got with 8K from this generation and what Samsung has done with 8K on the S21, I think it's early to be leaning on 8K video from a smartphone. 8K really comes into its own when you've got the ability to control the various aspects of your photography better. And I don't feel that in the near term, the immediate output that you're going to be getting from first generation 8K video phones is going to be the kind of footage that you look back on years later and go, wow, this is really like high quality video. I'm really glad that I preserved this memory in 8K over 4K.
What if you're a complete pleb with video like me?
So that's why
who leaves everything on audio.
So that's why I really think you need to be careful is 8K video on a Samsung is locked at 24 frames per second. LG is at least acknowledging that there's going to be frame drift, that they're going to be either dropped frames or just a somewhat less consistent clock for how that footage is shot. So they technically shoot at 26 frames per second to make sure the phone never dips below 24 frames per second. So you technically have a variable frame rate. My problem with 24 frames per second is a lot of the shooting scenarios you're going to be in, you're not going to be locking your shutter. So as lighting conditions change, the only way that we can kind of account for the exposure is to radically jack the shutter speed. So each individual frame becomes this hyper short burst of a shutter. And that leads to this very clipped and choppy look to the footage.
Right.
Because you're working just an insanely fast shutter. If there was a way to add like an ND filter or an aperture so that you could control light in another way, you could leave the shutter longer and the footage would look more cinematic. It would look smoother. That's not what we get on these first generation phones. So I don't think the 8K look is very pleasant, because if you shoot 4K 60 instead, and you've got a much faster shutter, you're almost tripling the frames per second, that just looks liquid smooth. I mean, it looks unnaturally smooth. And that's where I think the strong part, for someone like you, who you're saying, I just want to pull this out of my pocket, I want to shoot really high quality video, 4K 60 gives you buttery smooth action, or you can then do something silly with it, like stretch it in half and get like a half speed slow motion out of the exact same footage for anything that you might want to use. If that's on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube, I mean, a silly phone app can open up some startling potentials even for full auto video. I wouldn't rate 8K too heavy unless you were considering shooting in the pro mode and really controlling every aspect of how you're crafting that footage.
Yeah, I have no idea how to do that, so I'll leave that to the experts. So I mean, I have heard of the LG Wing, this thing that comes up with an angle. Yeah. It's gimmicky in a sense of it's unique and it's just one single line of products. Is it worth looking at, really, as a long-term phone solution in light of where LG is now?
So ultimately, whenever you ask me a question like that, the answer will be yes, but in varying degrees of audience size. And this is where I really feel like you need to be honest with what it is that you want out of a phone. I'm going to if you tell me that you're considering the Wing, I'm going to believe you. And I'm going to tell you all the things I like about it and why you should consider that phone. But I put the Wing in as a specialty or a niche device. And maybe it's only a perfect fit for 100 people out there, but those 100 people are going to love what this phone does. So where V60 and Velvet, the full clamshell dual displays, I feel are more robust for a pickup and put down kind of experience. They're not great for an on-the-go experience. A dual display case can be very unwieldy. Wing is not good as a put-down option. Like, it can't stand up on its own. It's an awkward T shape. You're finding different ways to kind of like prop it up or get like a tablet stand. It's not good for
at
that.
45 degrees.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of like, sort of cock it to the side and then hope it doesn't, fall off your table or something like that. But where Wing shines is building a screen as a handle in a very ergonomically accessible way. And it's a phenomenal on-the-go solution. So if I'm shooting video on a V60, I've got like a dual display kind of flopping below because I don't want to keep constantly taking my phone in and out of the dual display case. And it's harder to wield. Like, if you ever do that thing where you hold the phone in one hand and use the volume rocker as your shutter button, V60 is almost impossible to do that with. It is very difficult.
I usually do that with kind of like selfies when I've got, my partner and stuff with the volume rocker, because my arms aren't long enough or my fingers don't grip around a device.
So one of the things, I mean, like, we can chat later. I mean, if we really want to dig into the nitty gritty, like there's some software on LG phones that can help that. But on the whole, V60 is a pocket computer. And it lives better when you can put it down, you can pick it up, you're navigating two full displays, and you're giving it all of your attention with both hands and your eyes and your ears and all of your
work
fingers.
Phone.
To a work phone in a more sedentary work usage.
Yeah.
Wing is a blast when you're running around. I mean, it really is a completely different idea on having multiple displays. And you flick out that extra screen and you've got a grip that's a more traditional candy bar style grip. The one thumb navigation on that is pretty easy. They even have a trackpad if you want to control the top screen with like a mouse cursor, so that you never have to use two hands if you don't want to have to use two hands.
Yeah.
The top screen also has stylus support, so you can use an active pen stylus on the outer display on the Wing. And then the video, having that full gimbal mode, like you were saying, you want something that's maybe a bit more full rails auto. It's only 1080p, but in good light, it is some of the most stunningly smooth 1080p video you can shoot while you're running with the phone.
Because you don't have a gimbal, because you're a bit further away from the sensor, and I guess the OIS can really dig in there.
I'm pretty sure what they're doing is it's less about hardware and more about taking a near fisheye view and then software cropping into that with a more rectilinear final image. But there's enough field of view where you can hold still with the Wing, and there's a little virtual joystick. and you can pan
Right.
across the whole
Yeah.
scene up and down, just like on a proper gimbal. There's enough room on that. I think it's mostly software. I don't think it's as much hardware. But again, it's extremely well implemented. Dual video. I mean, something I don't
Yeah.
even think the V60 can do if you want to record yourself while you're showing someone else a part of the
Yeah.
scene. And again, it's phenomenally well incorporated into this on the go use. So I feel like between Wing and the dual displays like the Velvet and the V60, you draw the line on, am I more apt to be going to an office and then propping this up next to my desk, or am I going to be more out and about trying to take care of multitasking or trying to shoot action kinds of video?
So now you've got me thinking, how long is this human malware situation going to continue for? It's already been a year, right?
Yeah.
I mean, running and gunning is the sort of thing we do at a trade show, right?
Yeah.
We haven't done that recently.
But
I think the first time we jump into it, we're going to feel it. It's going to be hard.
Oh, getting back up to speed is going to be rough.
It
really will be. But even for the little outdoor shots that I do in my videos and my reviews, I switched from the V60 to the Wing for most of my outdoor B-roll because it's still shooting 4K 60. It's the same sensor as what we have on the V60. The audio is kind of in the same state. I mean, like it's proven to be a pretty compelling companion camera to some of my more mainstream mirrorless.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to go back and think about this. You've made it even worse. You made it more complex.
So
why did I get an expert on the stream?
Yeah, it's the problem I have with a lot of our tech conversations, and I'm sure you feel this in like the PC space, is it's easy for a consumer to overbuy if they're not honest about what they're really going to use a machine for. There's a lot of fear about, am I going to get something that's going to go the distance and get these upgrades, or do I get this socket for a motherboard so that I can upgrade the CPU that I know I'm never going to upgrade, and by the time I upgrade, I'm just going to have to get a new motherboard anyway. Phones have similar FUD, and if you can just take that half step back and say, like, this is what I really do, this is what I'd like to do. Like, there's something that you really want to push the usage of your phone. It's way easier to kind of hone in on, oh, this would be the right phone for me. And again, we also, it's fair to balance this. We're not entirely sure what the long-term software strategy is going to be for LG. The official press communication is saying longer term support is going to be different in every region, and we don't know what that
sounds weird.
Like yet.
That sounds like a weird thing to say, right?
Well,
surely,
but it definitely communicates, because LG's strategy over the last 2 years has been very carrier focused.
Yeah.
So in some regions, I'm sure they've got very specific rules and contracts for how they're going to maintenance and support these phones. In regions where they mostly sold unlocked, I'd actually be a little bit more concerned that those are the devices that will fall off the support chain earlier, because there was no other entity mandating a certain tier of hardware support and software support. So I think it's fair to consider that, but also knowing that LG's almost always sold well below MSRP, and that here in the United States, I'm seeing V60s on like fire sale. They're going for like $300. And when you compare what the V60 can do at 300 against like a $300 Nord, I mean, like it's a pretty safe hardware comparison for the LG there.
Well, I mean, you've basically gone into the second part of what I wanted to talk to you about, is with LG's smartphone. They say they're winding up operations. Whether that means actually selling the operations or not, we don't know. But the exact issues with buying a smartphone with a company at the end of its life cycle. For years, we've been talking with these companies about, are we going to have 2 or 3 years of Android security updates? Are we going to get 2 or 3 years of Android updates even? I think we can safely say that no future LG phone is getting a full Android update going forward.
It seems unlikely. I mean, I feel like that's totally fair.
But I mean, the newest phone released was what, October last year?
Yeah, end of the year last year was the Wing.
Yeah, so I mean, literally 6-8 months old, and those customers are being told, "Sorry, we're leaving the market. If it breaks, we can't replace it. We're not going to replace it. We don't care. Or, I
Well,
mean, that might be up to the carrier or
the,
stuff, but
I mean, that's unfortunately the wait and see is we really do need this has always been the critical misstep for LG is just how poor they are at communicating with their customers. The customer ground game and the outreach game has always been kind of is always been lacking. And so even when
which is weird when it's weird when the PR is actually being quite good to us.
yes, exactly. I mean the PR relationships that I've worked with LG over years, like I I really enjoy working with their teams. It's the final stage of the ground game where they just don't feel like a presence in their customers' lives, and they feel like they just bounce on these products, even though that's not really the truth of how they've handled numerous issues in the past. They actually do a pretty good job in many respects. It's just they don't talk about it ever, so you never know that. This is why the anxiousness is rising a bit, is because this is kind of classic LG. We've got the main bullet point that they're going to be pulling out of the smartphone game. It's the particulars, it's the details, it's the support, it's the aftermarket care. It's will they be able to fulfill their promises on second year? Like LG was actually very very good about supporting products out for 2 years on their manufacturer warranties. Now we just need the final sort of confirmation on those kinds of things. So I wouldn't say that it's done. This is the wait and see to see will they be living up to those obligations. I think it's more likely they'll be living up to those obligations in the areas where they had more robust carrier partnerships.
Yeah. So I mean, they said the division July 31st is when they expect to close doors with ongoing support and some sales based on stock levels afterwards, just because stuff to sell. It's what we're recording this 5th of April. So 3 months down the line, do you think we'll actually get a sense of LG saying anything between now and then? Or will it be more of a...
I think it's going to be an unknown. Yeah, it's going to be catch as catch can. You know, it's going to be if you have a problem, you're going to try and contact LG, and that's when you'll find out. I really do believe that this will be one of the consistent hallmarks of LG smartphone history.
Yeah.
Is sort of like even into this, where we kind of deserve to know what the expectations should be. We probably won't get that really nicely buttoned up press release that spells out this is what the relationship's going to look like, this is how it's going to operate, this is what you should be able to do. It's going to be more reactive. The consumer that has a problem is going to reach out, and then they'll discover whether or not they've been left out in the cold.
Well, in that case, they would reach out to the carrier because of the chain of how LG operates. So you wouldn't necessarily get a statement from LG, you'd get it from the carrier relation to the customers who use LG phones, which again makes it so much more fractured.
Yes, and for a business move this this large, again, I mean, we're talking, this is a massive sea change in the world of mobile phone manufacturing.
Hundreds of millions of units.
Yeah, and especially here in the United States, where they were still, I mean, you look at the overall market share, they were still a decently strong double-digit number 3 in the United States. This is where I would like LG to step up and give us more of the dog and pony show. Just because we know that the practicalities of their relationship are more carrier focused doesn't mean that they couldn't take the initiative, be proactive, and send off the division with clearer communication. I just don't think it's as likely that that's what they'll do. I think it'll be more a parts are in the pipeline. There are replacement displays, there are batteries, there are components. They all exist. Like, you can still go back and rebuild an LG G6 if you want. That's not really that difficult to find, but they'll put the onus on that first step of the communication with carriers, and it's up to the consumer to initiate that conversation, as opposed to just getting a bullet point in LG Home or in the LG Plus, like the little apps that they can use to communicate directly. I just don't see it happening there first.
So I guess the ultimate question is, do you recommend that people still buy LG phones with this news?
Yeah, nothing but LG. Ride or die, baby.
Chill.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean there's something to be said for getting a good deal on a fire sale, man. I mean, like my first tablet was
$300 sounds great.
I mean, a V60 at 300 bones is really hard to ignore. It all comes down to what you feel comfortable with, and what your expectations on a product like this might be. Like every time we've closed out one of these companies, we find that there's actually kind of a second life for them. Like the Essential lived for years beyond the company sort of officially ending production on the PH1. I just recently pulled out my Razer phone, and I was shocked to find that the Razer phone is actually pretty up to date on security patches. It's Android 9, but it's running.
Mine's still over there. Yeah,
fire it up. I would be curious to see if this is true of all regions. But like the Razer phone 2, I believe is on February of 2021 security patches, which is hilarious but adorable. So you need to manage some of that. I'm not so heartbroken about not getting another Android update, another operating system update. But I would be a little concerned about security patches. It definitely impacts your behavior, what risk you're comfortable taking, how you manage your personal data online. A lot of it, I think, is user behavior preventable, but there are going to be some exploits that are just completely out of our control. So that's definitely a concern. But if you're a hardware junkie like I am, some of these sales, like I might pick up a second Wing just to have dual different options on different carriers, and for how much I love the 4K video that I've been shooting on the Wing. And then I'm really trying to scout a backup dual display for the V60 because I used mine crazy. So it's definitely a bit worn out, and I want to have a backup for if and when that goes too. It's a buyer beware in any time you see a division like this close, but fire sales can be kind of fun, you know. You can definitely score some really fun deals, and especially as a hobbyist or as an enthusiast. I mean, if your backup phone was a V60, I don't think you'd be so concerned about software because that thing is a tank. I mean, it's just a monster performer regardless. So, you know, you could do real well with a V60 as your side piece.
Side piece. I think I need a new main piece first. Side piece maybe the Wing. Let's see.
I'm definitely a bit more conservative about grabbing a great deal on an LG today as your main piece, but also, I mean, coming from where you were and describing what issues you had on your Huawei there, I would say at least for a year, the V60 is still going to be a phenomenally capable performer. I don't think it'll degrade like you saw on your P30.
Look, dude, if you say you're going to pick up a second Wing at the next event we both go to, I want to see you running around with a Wing in both hands.
Dual Wings.
It's the only way to stream events from now on.
Heck yeah, and shoot video from both the front and rear on both of them. So I'm dual video, dual phone.
It's about Back to the Future, where the guy's watching 6 channels at once.
Projection TV.
That's your future stream.
I love it. Okay, I'm gonna have to find a way to make that happen.
So, I mean, thanks for joining me on this pre-recorded video. I mean, you've had me on for a creator chat. I'll put a link so people can see 2 hours of us talking about the industry and all the fun things that go into ethics and reviewing.
For sure.
But why don't you let people know who you are, where they can find you, and where they should absolutely subscribe?
Absolutely. So the main feed, all the stuff that I post and work on, you can catch on somegadgetguy.com. I run a Patreon community, patreon.com/somegadgetguy, just a bit more engaged community. We do gaming nights and movie nights, and that's where all my camera and audio deep dives go. I'm still doing streams on new PC hardware with Newegg. I was piggybacking on some of your 11th gen Intel coverage, and I was working with ASUS to talk about some new motherboards. I'm now covering carrier and ISP news over at reviews.org. And I'm also doing a weekly live stream with my buddy TK Bay called The Best of Our Week. So I feel like if you needed to fill your entire working week with my voice, you could probably cover most of your daily life with me talking at you about various tech topics.
You've done voice acting though, haven't you?
A lot of directing.
You've got a presenter's voice. Yeah,
I'm ripping off voice actors left and right. I was usually the guy on the other side of the mic telling them what to do, but you still learn a little.
Again, thanks for joining me on this pre-recorded video. Let me know if you get a second wing. I
will do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's gonna have to be your profile picture.
Oh heck yeah! I'll make sure that I'm in your Twitter DMs as soon as I grab one if I do.